My name is Wendy Myers. Welcome to the MyersDetox podcast, where we talk about everything related to heavy metal toxicity, chemicals, detoxing your body, and detox tools, supplements, and just general overall health. And toxins are one of the number one primary drivers of disease today. It's so important to be adding detoxification to your already healthy lifestyle. That's why I do this show. You've got to be thinking about toxins and remove them from your body and home and environment if you plan to be healthy and remain that way. Today we have my friend Eileen Durfee on the show, and she's going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of air filters and ways to increase oxygen in your body, which is super important. And she's such a wealth of information. I just love having her on the show. And she's a really avid inventor, prolific inventor, and I use all of her products and highly recommend them so much. And today we're talking about air filters and why indoor air is 5 times more toxic than outdoor air. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And exactly what you're breathing in every day. I think people don't realize all the different heavy metals and chemicals and things that are in the air that we breathe in. We'll talk about the latest in small portable air filtration devices that really can actually work better than larger devices that many people purchase that are much more expensive but not better. And we'll also talk about if you have breathing issues or asthma or chemical sensitivity, how filtering your personal airspace can be incredibly helpful. And also why it's not enough to simply filter your air. You want a device that also can produce oxygen and can produce negative ions as well, because this will just give you additional health benefits. So all that and more today on the show. And you guys listening, you're listening because you're concerned about detoxing your body. You're concerned about toxins in the environment and the threat that those pose to your health. And I wanted to give you guys an easy way to assess the relative levels of toxins that you have in your body based on some lifestyle questions. So I created a 2-minute quiz that you can go take at heavymetalsquiz.com, and that's going to give you your results, your relative levels of toxin levels, and also a video series, a totally free series after you take the quiz to give you the next steps. What do you do? There's so many different choices, so many things we talk about on the podcast, but I give you the very next steps, what you should do, where you should start on your detox journey. I created a really good educational video series after you take that quiz. So go check it out, totally free at heavymetalsquiz.com. Our guest today, Eileen Durfee, is a nuclear power engineer, auditor, and inspector, and she became toxic and suffered from allergies, major food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, and thyroid disease. And during her journey to heal, detoxify, and achieve natural health, she invented a lot of really helpful solutions. Mother is the necessity of invention. She was needing tools that she couldn't find that she really wanted, so she just created them herself. And Eileen is passionate about taking good ideas and creating better health products to support detoxification, energy production, mineralization, and natural health. And she's been granted numerous patents and has patents pending and is writing a self-help book about low back pain to fix the $100 billion a year low back pain problem. Eileen, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me again.
So let's talk a little bit about, how you got into the health industry. Like you have taken every aspect of detox and totally rethought it, re-engineer it, and just love what you're doing in your company and on your side. Tell us your story.
I've been sick my whole life, and back when I was growing up, doctors didn't have a clue. My parents weren't into natural things. And then when I started working at nuclear power plants and just the home building industry, being around all these chemicals and everything, I became really, really sick. So it was like a process of elimination. Medications, weren't actually controlling my symptoms. At one time, I was allergic to everything. And so that's where you go through your house and you don't use anything with any fragrances or chemicals. You have air purifiers, you got to have the dust and the particles and, even the food you eat, So I was eating more like a paleo diet before paleo existed, like in the 1980s. And it's just been, just eye-awakening to me that so many of my problems were because I was toxic.
Yeah.
I was acid. I just had all these things. I didn't have the right minerals, and my body was just like a jalopy. Nothing was working right. And so I just had this underlying belief, though, that if my body just had a little help and had what it really needed, that it would heal itself. And so, early days, no toxic chemicals. Now you can go to the store and you can get stuff, like Go Green and, non-toxic. I mean, there's such an awareness now of how these things are making us sick. So it was just my journey. And then I've always been a gizmo woman, being a nuclear power plant engineer, auditor, and trainer. I mean, I see things in blueprint form. And so when I buy a gizmo and I try it and it's like, oh man, I like this, but I wish it was this, that, and the other thing, I just go to sleep and I wake up and I see it. And so then I just naturally like to build things. It makes me feel good. So I'm prototyping and I'm just making things, not necessarily to work for every circumstance that someone might have, but something small, affordable, something that you'll actually use. Because, I have such a bad reputation for having so many gizmos that I'll get and then never really use. And so part of what I've tried to do is make everything easy, friendly, something that we'll actually use in our daily life and have it become part of our routine, because that's really consistency. That's really the only way that it's going to make a huge impact in our lives. But the good news to all of this, there's some simple things that you can do that'll make big changes in your health, that will protect you from accumulating more toxins and that can help you to eliminate toxins. So this is all good stuff.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you have done is really thought a lot about air filtration, because this is really, really important, because indoor air can be 5 times more toxic than outdoor air. So talk a little about that and why we really need to think about filtering our air.
Yeah, it is more important. If you don't breathe, you're going to die quicker than without water, or if you burned your hand or something like that. So that's your number one exposure to chemicals and toxins, is breathing. So it's natural that we should think about a first line of defense of purifying our air. Nowadays, with the 21st century, most of us are indoors, 80% of the time, sometimes even 90% of the time. And then with our house designs being more energy efficient, we have fewer air changes. They're, sealed up to where you're not getting cross ventilation, air exchanges, and then all the building materials we're using. They're,
Horrifying, horrifying.
yeah,
The
yeah.
stuff that's in our homes, it deteriorates and then turns into dust, and then we breathe it in. It's terrible.
So, that is so important. The Health and Human Services says that respiratory illness symptoms, when you double the ventilation, go down significantly. So, air purification, like when there aren't high pollen counts or high dust counts and it's a nice day, that's why it's so important maybe to open up the doors, get, some fresh air in your home, air it out. Think about going all non-toxic for your chemicals and cleaners, for everything from your laundry to maintaining your home. Another issue is mold. 1 in 2 homes has a moisture problem. And then that, mold is horrible. So you really have to remove the food for the mold and how the moisture was getting there to begin with, because even the best air purifiers in the world, if there's constant growth and exposure of mold, then we can't do anything about that. So we got to be on the first line of defense, especially this is fall, winter time. And a recommendation that I'd like to make for people is do not close up your crawl space vents. I'm driving around town and I'm already seeing people plug up their crawl space vents so that they don't get the cold air underneath their floor. Now, homes are supposed to have insulation in their floor, and the water lines should be up in that floor insulated, or they should be heat tape or properly insulated as they come out of the ground. And so, unless you've got like a certain circumstance where right there at the water line, you want to maybe protect it from freezing. But as a general rule, do not plug up the crawl space vents because it's based on square footage area and square inches. You want that ventilation to come in there. Otherwise, you can have mold coming up. You're supposed to have vapor barriers against the ground, but inevitably, if you close up those crawl space vents, you can be having condensation and moisture, and then that can get in your home. So, go green, go natural, make sure you got the ventilation. And then, even then, how about the drapes you just bought, or the new couch, or the new clothes that you come in and they smell new? That's because it's chemicals and all that stuff is outgassing. Has anybody ever gotten any new carpet and then their toddlers crawling on the carpet and then it's like they're getting asthma symptoms? All these things we need to really take a look at, and then purify our air on top of it. Just because of it being closed up and being climate controlled, we're going to have issues indoors.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's the furniture that people buy. And I really haven't seen very many non-toxic furniture places at all to buy healthy furniture. I've seen it for healthy mattresses, but not like your couch or other things like that. So just a lot of exposure of toxins,
Right.
chemicals, and just the average household. I mean, it's crazy the amount of stuff that's getting into the air that we breathe in. And then mold. I mean, so many people have mold issues. I've sold a home and then escaped from another home that had mold, and people just don't have that on their radar. So let's talk a little bit about outdoor air. What kind of toxins are we getting that are coming into the home that we're breathing, when we're out and about?
Well, I guess I wouldn't call pollen a toxin, but that's probably more reactive and affects people severely and pretty quickly, or, pollen and grass counts. But you've got automobile exhaust fumes. Even though we have unleaded gasoline now, those fumes from burning petrochemicals are giving you exposure. Even people, burning fireplaces, but you've got the industrial exposure from plants. This summer, somebody called me and said, Eileen, there's smoke, black smoke coming from your office area. And so I run down here, and one of the neighboring businesses, they were welding something, and he caught this field on fire, and there were tires burning.
Ugh.
I mean, it's like there's a lot of people that will just burn stuff in the air. I mean, we were up deer hunting, and we went by and saw the neighbors. And just every plastic, something that I would just never put to burn, to put in the air. I mean, they're just like throwing it in the fire. Generally, there's a lot of people, a majority of the people that don't care about the environment, that are causing pollution that's all around us. I mean, the wind shifts, and we're just going to be breathing all that stuff in.
Yeah, and then that gets into our homes. And I live in Huntington Beach, where there is some sort of like water treatment plant and industry, and you can smell this sulfuric chlorine type smell periodically. That's just really overwhelming at times. So we all have this in our midst that we deal with, that gets into our homes. So let's talk about the latest in small portable air filtration devices that can really even work better than these large, expensive air filters. I mean, I bought all kinds of air filters before. I bought like HEPA filters. It was this big, huge, round thing, and it was like really, really loud and sucked in air. And I didn't want to turn it on because it's just so loud. I'm like, I need to hear myself think. And then I bought other filters that I'd buy them, and I didn't realize it was the same thing. They have this really loud sucking contraption where they're sucking air through to filter it. So how have you kind of rethought air filters?
Well, the main thing is I'm not just in my home, and I'm just not in my office. So wherever I am, I'm exposed to toxic air. So I wanted to have something portable, or something that would work for a room, but that was small and versatile. So my first air purifier that I started making is called the Breathe Safe. It's really small. It's about 7 inches long and 2 inches wide and about 3 inches tall. And so this device comes with an electrical cord that you can plug into a wall, or you can plug into any USB. So like your computer, your portable battery bank, it can plug into your cigarette lighter. And this little air purifier is what they call a plasma air purifier. Everybody's heard of negative ion generators, but this goes a step further and uses a small portion of positive ions. Now we think about positive ions being unhealthy, but when you have a little tiny bit, like the Breathe Safe makes 19 million over 19 million negative ions, then it makes 4,500,000 positive. And so the negative and the positive, it has this ionic reaction, basically, that will rob hydrogen molecules off of pathogens or formaldehydes or benzenes or all these things that are, bad for us. And then it does break it down to fall to the ground like a negative ion generator. But it also leaves over millions of negative ions in the air we breathe. So it's just kind of a step up from there. Like the Los Angeles airport uses gigantic plasma air purifiers. And that's why when you go to that airport versus other airports, that you don't smell the jet fumes so much, because plasma is really good at getting rid of volatile organic, compounds and petroleum type things that can be in our air. So
for people who don't know what negative ions are, or the benefits of those, can you explain that?
Well, in nature, like when you go to the beach or a waterfall, the crashing water creates a negative charge on an ion. And actually, for the body to be healthy, we need to be having, 4,000 negative ions per cubic centimeter in the air when we breathe, because we've got negative charges and positive charges. It just helps our body function. And so nature makes them, like after a rainstorm, when you smell all that fresh, there's a lot of, negative charge there. And so nature cleans up the earth with negative ions. And so it's a natural occurrence. And unfortunately, with the 21st century, with our air-conditioned environments, the ductwork in our homes strip the air of negative ions. If you have a negative ion meter in your home that has an HVAC system, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, you're going to probably have around 400 to 500 negative ions per cubic centimeter. If you're on the LA freeway stuck in traffic with all the air inversion with the smog in there, you're going to probably only have that many. But when you go on vacation and you go to the beach or in your mountains, how you just feel so energized and fresh? It's because you're breathing negative ions. Even WebMD says if you can inhale enough negative ions, that it's better than an antidepressant. So a lot of people that are depressed, it could be that they just got a negative ion deficiency.
Yes. And this is so key. This is like the number one thing that people need to be adding, because it's so simple. It's simple to add negative ions to your environment or to your body by, swimming in the ocean or grounding or short of that. There's things you need to do indoors. And it solves a lot of downstream problems, because your body has to have these negative ions, which is basically electrons, because your body is an electrical being. We have to have this charge for our body to work properly, and also to protect from EMFs. EMFs give us positively charge our body. The negative ions counteract that. And so this is one of the most basic things that people need to understand and tend to if they want their body to work correctly. And I have my little breeze safe on all the time. I love it because you can tell the difference. It's striking. Say before you're using the breeze safe, you just have your stale air in your room, and you put the breeze safe on, and it's going for just a short amount of time. It's a completely different energy, feel, smell. It's amazing how well it works.
And by accident, we found out, after reading some of my customer reviews, and they're calling me up, telling me all these wonderful things about being able to breathe without having an asthma attack, or, just all these things, people with multiple chemical sensitivities, being able to go out now, they're not stuck in their home. So I sent it off to a lab to find out what is making this different than other plasma air purifiers or negative ion generators. And the results came back that it produces oxygen. So it's a new way to produce oxygen. Now, depending whether you're inside or outdoors, your background oxygen levels are going to range between 15 and 20%. The breeze safe increases oxygen levels 70 to 118%. And I'd like to ask people out there that maybe have the breeze safe, or if you get a breeze safe, if you have an oxygen monitor, because I've been getting calls from people where their oxygen levels are significantly going up when they are like sleeping with the breeze safe or using the breeze safe. And so there's another group of people that are really excited, about increasing oxygen levels in their body. There's just a lot of good benefits to that.
And that's another really important thing, because just overall, there's not enough oxygen in our environment. There's much less so than there was, say, 100 years ago. People have less oxygen saturation in their tissues. And as a result, they have more pathogens and infections and things like that because oxygen helps to kill all those off. So it's really, really important, again, to also oxygenate your environment as well. And so is there anything else you want to add to that, or maybe talk about any do's and don'ts of air filtration?
I'd like to add one more thing, and it is another use for the Breeze Safe and as an ionic sauna booster. There's some really interesting studies that have been done in Europe. They're mainly into the traditional sauna, and they will test and rate traditional saunas based on the negative ion output when you pour water over the heaters. Some brands make positive ions, so people, when they take those saunas, get extremely fatigued or exhausted. And so the study was showing that as long as you inhaled 20,000 negative ions per cubic centimeter when you were taking a sauna, a strange thing happened. Your body didn't cool its rectal temperature down. Normally, the first thing when you start getting hot is the body cools that down. It's like a stress response. When you inhale the negative ions, that doesn't happen. And then they actually they collected and measured the sweat off these people. And the ones that were inhaling negative ions, their volume of sweat was twice as much. Their skin temperatures were higher. But then when they asked everybody about the fatigue, be interesting, you'd think that the group that was hotter and sweat more would be more tired, but they were more energized. They didn't feel as tired. And even better yet, when they got out of the sauna, their rectal temperature continued to rise. So this is really special because there's a lot of people out there trying to get their core body temperature up to be able to kill weak cells or pathogens. And so if you can use a little hack device like the Breeze Save to maximize the effects of the sauna the time that you're in there, it's a really good thing.
And this is such a key thing because one of the biggest complaints people have after using a sauna is that they're tired. And they're like, wait a second, aren't I using this to detox so that I feel more energized and better? And I feel, in the past, I've felt tired, definitely from time to time after doing a sauna. But I think it's so wonderful that in using this in a sauna, it not only helps you feel better while you're doing a sauna and afterwards, but tell us about also the benefits of the toxin filtration that you get in the air that is coming off of your body in sweat when that vaporizes into the air.
Well, they've done studies where they've measured the sweat from people exercising versus people taking a sauna. And it's proven that when you get that parasympathetic sweat instead of, the fight or flight sweat, there's more toxins in the sweat. So, you're getting cadmium and mercury and just all these plastics and all this stuff coming out of you. And then, it gets humid in there, right? But you continue breathing. Even people say when they're in a sauna and it gets hot, it's difficult for me to breathe. Part of it is they're re-inhaling all the stuff they just detoxed out into the air. It's like toxic humidified sauna sweat.
Yeah.
And so the breeze...
So disgusting. But no one's thought about this. No one has thought about this. That's what I love about you. You think about all these little details that make all the difference in the world. Like, as long as you're spending time in a sauna, you've bought a sauna, and you're spending hours and hours over weeks and months in the sauna, and you might as well maximize your time to get the best effects.
Right, exactly. And, the Breeze Safe is just an amazing device that you can take anywhere with you. And one of the tips that I would say is, now when you buy a Breeze Safe, you get a brush. most air purifiers, you have to buy and replace filters. But that's not the case with the Breeze Safe. With the Breeze Safe, it's super simple. You just remove the cover, and then there's a plate there that collects dust. And you just take this brush, and you brush it, and you clean those little needles in there. And if you do that once a week, in less than a minute, then you keep it running at peak optimal performance. Because, that's one thing I've been guilty of with my Breeze Safe, because I actually have them in every room, and they just make such a big difference. And so to get around once a week, even though it takes less than 1 minute, I get busy and I forget. Well, I had this one Breeze Safe that my grandsons were playing around, and it got pushed back in the back. There was like 1/8 of an inch of dust just coating the whole thing, and it pitted the plate and the needles, and obviously it wasn't making negative ions or oxygen because I had it so dirty. So, my tip for the Breeze Safe is you don't have to buy filters, but take this brush with just like a minute and keep it clean. And then when it's clean, it won't pit the plate. So then you can have more years of life, from that air purifier.
Yeah, and that's another thing is when I had a HEPA filter, I've had other types of air filters. If you don't replace that soon enough, there's all kinds of bacteria and molds and other stuff that get on in that filter that then you're blowing back into your house.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So is there any other do's and don'ts about air filtration or problems with other types of air filters that you could discuss?
Well, one thing I'd like everybody to do is if they have an HVAC system, they have a cold air return. It's where you put your furnace filter. Depending on what kind of a furnace filter you buy, one of the most important things you can do is replace it monthly, or the kind that I buy is a little more expensive and it's got a different pleat in it, and I replace those every 3 months. I actually have a reminder set on my phone. It's like time to change the furnace filters. It's time to buy my new Sonicare brush heads for my toothbrush, and it's just like I get it done, and that will really make a huge difference. And that's, super simple, and then, your furnace won't be struggling, so it'll consume less electricity. So there's a lot of benefits to changing a furnace filter regularly. But, you talk to people, it's like, when did you change your furnace filter last? It's like they're just not changing them like they should. And if you do use these room air purifiers, and I'm like Wendy, I have a lot of them. I've bought all these different kinds of air purifiers, and they all have filters. They need to be cleaned, and if you don't clean them then or replace them when you should too, it's harder on the machines, and they'll prematurely break down and those kinds of things.
So what I love also about the Breathe Safe, that it's portable and you can put it near your body, you can carry it around with you everywhere, is that if you have asthma, you have breathing issues, you have chemical sensitivity, how can filtering your personal airspace help with that?
Well, there's less reaction that goes on in the body when it's trying to fight something foreign that shouldn't be there. And then ionized air is much easier to breathe. So the body can extract more of the oxygen that is in the air and make it usable. So, it's just this inflammatory response when people are having these reactions in their body that can be minimized.
Yeah, and so, like, for instance, I went to a conference recently. It was in Florida, and I was so bummed I forgot my breathe safe. It's so I'm staying at this hotel because I in Florida, it's humid, it's hot, it's moldy. Of course, I go to the hotel just knocked over by the mold smell. And there's carpet in my room in this really old hotel, tons of mold, and I'm like, oh my God, I need my breathe safe. And I really was suffering those 4 days I was at this conference. But that's, another use for it is if you're going outside of the cocoon that it's your home that most of us are trying to create, and you're going to a toxic office or you're traveling a lot, this little portable air filter device could be really indispensable.
I went to a trade show in a town where my cousin lived, and they had water infiltration in their basement. Had an extraordinary winter, and they, remodeled it and everything, and the guest bedroom was in the basement. Soon as I hit the stairs, I could feel it in my lungs, the mold. They don't even notice it. I mean, she smoked cigarettes, but they just couldn't even smell it. Literally, I had my Breathe Safe on its battery pack, and I just laid it in the bed, by my head so I could sleep, so my lungs weren't closing up. And then I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I had obviously rolled over and I wasn't facing the Breathe Safe, and I've, repositioned it. But it's just like, wow, it was just so intense. So now when I go to town, which I have, I just go get a hotel,
Yeah.
go visit, but don't try to, stay in that house. I mean, there are so many people that are unaware of the exposure of what they're doing to their bodies when there's mold in a house.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that people are experiencing symptoms from: severe fatigue, brain fog, health issues. And they go to their doctor, and the doctor's it's forget toxins. They're not thinking about mold either. It's just they're not looking at mold or heavy metals or chemicals. So people are just not getting the answers in
Well,
that regard.
I read some statistics about what's called medically unexplained symptoms. There's over 13 million people in the United States with the medically unexplained symptoms. And I would say the first thing to check is, what are you breathing? What's, in your home, out gassing? Are you doing air purification? And address those issues. And I think so many people would get relief by taking that first step.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And so you've developed this little breathe save, which is so cute. It's really the first time I'd seen like a tiny little personal air filter like this, because most of them are these big machines. And if you have a whole house, you have to lug this thing from room to room to room, and people get lazy and they don't do it. They just kind of have it on their bedroom, their living room. But what about the other rooms? And so you came up with another ingenious device. Can you talk about the Ionic Refresher?
Sure. Well, I went to visit my son, and he had all these Glade AirWick plug-in. It's not an air purifier. It's an air freshener, but it's covering up smells with a perfume that on the Health and Human Services website even lists ingredients as cancer causing. So it is really convenient to be able to plug something in the wall. And so I thought, well, gee, what if I used the carbon fiber tip technology that I had in my light bulbs in a little plug-in for the wall? So I did a design that has two carbon fiber tips that just plugs into any outlet, and then it purifies things. I sent it off, did some lab testing, and was very happy with the results. And so we do have the Ionic Refresher, and that's simple, where somebody could buy a package. We have a larger pack that we sell, that they could do their whole house for the cost of what one nice room air purifier would be, and it's silent.
Yes.
So the magic with this technology is there's a little bit of metal fibers in the carbon fiber tip. So when you apply electricity to it, it actually makes negative ions more effective at mopping up all the contaminants in the air. So it is actually more powerful on some of the test results than the Breeze Safe. The Breeze Safe makes oxygen and this one doesn't. But it's just like so easy to use. I mean, everybody has a spare outlet somewhere in a room that they could put this in.
Yeah.
And it does make a huge difference. Like people that live in condominiums. How about if your neighbor smokes? I've gotten lots of calls from people where their neighbors smoke and they just can't get rid of the smell and they really want to sell their condominium. I actually have a lab test with the Ionic Refresher in a chamber with cigarettes, and in seconds you can just see the smoke disappear. It's phenomenal, and it works really well. And it's unlike a lot of the other plug-in air purifiers. I gave the one example of the Glade Airwick, but there are also other little plug-in air purifiers that actually use ozone. So breathing ozone above 0.02 part per million is something that irritates the lungs, competes with the oxygen receptors. It's something that we don't want to do. And so to have a straight plug-in ozone air purifier, I wouldn't recommend it. I did have this one tested for ozone, and it makes 0.02 part per million. So it's totally safe. So you still, besides the negative ions and the carbon fiber tip technology, you are getting a little freshening, cleansing effect, but with safe levels of ozone.
Yeah, and these are so amazing because I highly recommend people get like a pack of six or a pack of 12 and just plug one into every single room in your home and forget it. And you will have fresh air, negative ions, oxygen, a tiny little bit of ozone that can kill mold and do, other positive things, but not enough to irritate your lung or displace oxygen in your body. And it's just amazing because, like, for me, I've always had the big, air filters and had to go from room to room to room. And then you have to carry it around, and no one's going to do that. They're not going to have their air filter in the room for 2 hours and then take it downstairs for 2 hours and put it in the garage for 2 hours. And I would just use it when I had like a bad smell, or like when outside all the chemicals are being released into the air, and use it to clean up my bedroom. So I'm, because I'm fearful of the toxins being released into the air and breathing that in. But this is such a more practical solution where every single room in your home can benefit and have clean, healthy air. So Eileen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's such a pleasure talking to you because you make so many different distinctions about do's and don'ts of air filters, and have just re-envisioned air filtration and made it so simple, portable, and affordable, which is really, really key for so many people that are looking for solutions that are affordable. Eileen, thanks for coming on the show. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. We're on this show, on the MyersDetox podcast. We want to help educate you and give you all the tools and tips and tricks to help detox your home, your life, and your body so you can live your healthiest life. So thanks so much for coming on the show, Eileen. And thanks everyone for joining me. God bless.